I have always been engaged in the community. Whether it was Girl Scouts or a school service project, I spent a lot of time volunteering throughout my youth. But sophomore year of college was when I really started making independent decisions to intentionally become involved in the communities beyond my hometown. I am pursuing a double major in Spanish Studies and Global Studies with concentrations in Human Rights and Justice and Latin America. In the winter of 2017, during my sophomore year, I decided to join an immigration service learning class to the U.S.-Mexico border. It was here that I walked the trails that migrants use to cross the border into the U.S. I saw firsthand the trials and judicial process for migrants who had been detained by Border Patrol officers. I spoke with asylum seekers being held in detention centers. Immigration had always been an issue on the forefront of my mind, but during this trip I realized how urgent the need was to share what I learned, to share the experiences of asylum seekers and migrants, the motives behind leaving their countries, the dangerous paths they took to make it to the U.S., and the human rights violations they encountered on the border and in detention centers. I connected with an English teacher from my mom's school and presented to her class. I even reached out to the Catholic women's group in my hometown and presented to them. This experience allowed me to realize the skills and passions I have to be an advocate, not only regarding immigration, but all areas of human rights. The following spring of 2017, I took part in an off-campus study program, HECUA. This experience included about 10 hours of class per week where we learned about inequality within the St. Paul and Minneapolis communities, and then connected the knowledge to internships in the community. I volunteered for 20 hours a week with St. Stephen's Human Services, an organization that works to end homelessness. My role was to support the Zamia Theater Project, a project that brings people of all different backgrounds together, many of whom have experienced homelessness, to put their stories into plays that are then presented to the community. I spent time working with the participants, hearing their stories, and supporting the creative process of putting their story into a script. Through hearing their stories, I learned about them as individuals and the different life events that have affected where they are today, and also learned about the different systems that had a hand in making their situation extra complicated. We presented a showcase in the spring, and I was inspired by the troupe and wanted to bring their stories and the issue of homelessness to the forefront in my hometown community in New Ulm. I applied for a local grant, which we received, and spent the summer fundraising and planning for the troupe to perform in New Ulm. The performance went well, and there was a great community discussion afterwards regarding local homelessness in our own community in Greater Minnesota. Following these experiences, I began my junior year with a class called International Human Rights Law. After my previous volunteer experiences, I had been thinking about a career in public policy, and so this class provided a much more legal and policy-based approach than my previous global studies classes. I also continued pursuing my Spanish major as I knew that in the future I wanted to work with the immigrant and refugee community, and having Spanish communication skills would greatly benefit such work. After this class, which taught me about the ins and outs of the United Nations system and the Declaration of Human Rights, I realized that human rights and/or immigration law might be on my horizon. I carried this mindset into my semester abroad the following spring of 2018. I spent a semester studying abroad in Ecuador, where I completed a 6-week internship with El Centro de Atención Integral de Mujeres y Familia Imbabureña, also known as CAIMIFI. This organization provides psychological therapy for victims of violence as well as therapy for aggressors. I spent the other half of my day shadowing a public defender who worked mainly with women securing child support and also defended victims of violence during hearings. These experiences allowed me to apply my legal and social-emotional interests to methods of advocacy, and the opportunities were in and of themselves wonderful learning opportunities in regards to the intersection of legal, cultural, and social norms, in relation to gender-based violence. A perfect example of how I've been able to apply academic interests to fieldwork and envision future careers. I am currently in my senior year at the University of Minnesota and am volunteering at the Advocates for Human Rights. The organization connects people with free legal representation for their asylum cases. I work on the client line, which means that I answer the phone and speak with people who are calling in to seek asylum. This internship allows me to utilize my Spanish communication skills, as well as apply the background knowledge I have regarding asylum, immigration, and human rights. Looking back at my community work, I can identify that immigration, housing, and gender equality have all been important issues for me. And while they may seem different, they are all intersectional issues and are all under the theme of human rights. So whether I decide to move forward in a legal career or pursue a path of social work, I know that I will be carrying my background in community service work with me.